Today, we're demystifying a really critical tool that powers so much of the modern data-driven world, Azure Data Factory. You could think of it as the invisible engine that's constantly moving and shaping the information businesses rely on every single day.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll dive into the big problem that ADF was built to solve. Then, we'll get into what it is, how it works, walk through a quick example, and then wrap it all up with why this technology is such a massive game changer. You know, to really get why a solution like Azure Data Factory is so important, we first have to appreciate the problem it was designed for. And for most businesses today, that problem is just pure data chaos. I mean, think about it for a second. Your company's data isn't sitting in one neat little box, right? It's siloed. It's locked away in dozens of different systems, making it incredibly hard to get a single, complete picture of what's going on in the business. And the scale of the challenge is just the sheer variety of these sources. We're talking about data that's scattered all over the place, in traditional SQL databases, simple CSV files, web APIs, servers sitting right there in your office, and even on other cloud platforms like AWS. Trying to connect all of that manually, it's a logistical nightmare. So this is the fundamental question, isn't it? It's what every data-driven organization has to figure out. How do you wrangle all this chaos into something useful? Something that can actually drive smart business decisions. And this, right here, is where Azure Data Factory steps onto the stage. It's Microsoft's really powerful answer, designed specifically to tame this kind of data chaos. Now, the most important thing to get about ADF is that it doesn't actually store the data itself. Its job is to be the bridge, the coordinator. It's like an orchestra conductor, telling each piece of data where to go, when to move, and how to change along the way.
Now, ADF is what we call an ETL and an ELT tool, and this slide shows the two main strategies it uses. The traditional ETL way is to extract data, transform it while it's in transit, and then load the clean version. But the more modern ELT approach, which is fantastic for big data, is to extract and load the raw data first, then use the massive power of the destination system, like a cloud data warehouse, to transform it. The cool part is, ADF handles both of these approaches seamlessly.
In fact, its role is so central that it's the core integration engine inside other huge Azure services you might have heard of, like Synapse Analytics and Microsoft Fabric. It really is the backbone of any modern data solution on Azure. Okay, so now that we know what ADF is from a high level, let's kind of peek under the hood and look at the fundamental pieces that make it all work. Getting this logical flow is really key. First, you create a link service. That's basically your connection string. Then you define a dataset, which points to the exact data you want to touch. And finally, you build a pipeline, which is the sequence of steps that will act on that data. And each one of those individual steps inside your pipeline, that's called an activity. Just think of it as the verb. It's the action that gets performed on your data, like copy this, filter that, or transform this. All right, theory is great and all, but let's put these building blocks together. Let's look at a real-world scenario to see how a pipeline actually works in practice. So just imagine you've got a folder where sales data and a whole bunch of other random files get dropped every single day. The goal is to build an automated process that filters and moves only the important sales files over to the reporting team. And this slide just perfectly visualizes the kind of logic ADF can run all by itself. It gets a list of all the files, it loops through them one by one, it applies a conditional check, and then it performs an action based on that result. All of this happens automatically with zero manual work. So we've seen what Azure Data Factory is, and we've gotten a little peek at how it works. But what's the real-world impact? Why should you actually care about this? Well, ultimately, it's about three really key things. First, it gives you a central backbone for all your data. Second, it replaces all that chaotic manual work with powerful automation, which cuts down on errors and costs. And third, it delivers reliable data that leads to actual insights, getting you to those critical business decisions way faster. And this is a huge deal. It makes really sophisticated data processing accessible not just to hardcore coders, but to a much, much broader audience of data professionals. You get all the power of something like Apache Spark without having to deal with the complexity. This quote from an expert really captures it all, doesn't it? It highlights its essential, almost non-negotiable role in any modern Azure data stack. It's not just another tool, it's the foundation. And that's our look at Azure Data Factory, the true conductor of the cloud's data orchestra. As data becomes more critical than ever,
The real question isn't if you need to orchestrate it, but how. Thanks for joining us.